everybody. Welcome tonight, and thank you so much for coming to our special event tonight. My name is Ellysa Cahoy, and I am proud to serve as one of the assistant directors of the Pennsylvania Center for the Book. So before we begin, I would like to acknowledge the contributions of some of the wonderful people that we have in this room tonight. First and foremost, we'd like to thank Dean Barbara Dewey for sponsoring the Pennsylvania Center for the Book and for her support of this event. We also want to thank Associate Dean Lisa German. Where's Lisa German? There she is right there, and Barbara Dewey's right up here in the second row, for her support and guidance of the Pennsylvania Center for the Book as well. And if our public poetry board members could also raise their hands, we'd like to thank Julia Kasdorf. There she is. And Christopher Walker. And Dr. Stephen Berg, Director of the Center for the Book. These are all of our Public Poetry Advisory Board members. Thank you to all of you for your guidance and support. We, of course, want to thank the English Department for their support of and sponsorship of this event. Thank you to Wilson Hutton, right here in the front row, who has designed these amazing posters that you are going to take away with you tonight. He's an artist. And we'd also like to thank Bill Keister of the Penn State Bookstore for providing copies of many of our poets' works for purchase after the reading. A special thank you to our coordinator, Caroline Wermuth, right here in the front row, Caroline puts together this entire event, and she's amazing. And then finally, and I hope that each of our judges, or how do I want to say this, our selection committee members will stand. First of all, we'd like to say thank you to Jerry Costanzo. Jerry, could you stand for us? Thank you. There he is. Jerry's a poet. He's director of the Carnegie Mellon University Press, and he's a professor also at Carnegie Mellon. These are the people who selected the poets that you are going to hear and enjoy tonight. And actually, in Jerry Costanzo's instance, Jerry's also going to read for one of our poets. So thank you for that, too, Jerry. We'd also like to thank Jim Brassfield. Jim, could you stand for us? Thank you, Jim. Jim is a poet himself, and he's right here from Penn State as well. He's a senior lecturer in English. And then finally, our third member of the selection committee is not here with us tonight, but her name is Yona Harvey. She's a poet, and she's an assistant professor at the University of Pittsburgh. We're indebted to each of you for sharing your expertise with us and for selecting these amazing poets. A little bit about the Public Poetry Program. This project focuses on poets with a connection to Pennsylvania and displays the poetry in public places through these posters to make it a part of the daily lives of a greater number of people. We bring poetry to the people through this project. Since the project began in 2000, 65 poems have been printed and placed, probably more than that actually, maybe now, in public places throughout Pennsylvania. And tonight, we showcase 4 poets and poems selected by our judges for this honor. And so with that, it's now my pleasure and my honor to introduce the Paterno Librarian for Family Literature, Bill Brockman, who will introduce tonight's poets.
Thanks, Ellysa. It's great to see a good audience here tonight. And exciting to have this roster of poets from the East. We've been favoring Pittsburgh over the last few years, so tonight we have a couple of Philadelphia natives, and I suppose Lancaster can sort of be in the East, and certainly Bucknell. Before we get started, I want to recognize the passing of Maxine Cumin, who died last month at the age of 88 in New Hampshire. Some of you will remember that she was one of our poets in 2003 when her poem Sisyphus was selected for printing on a poster. And if you look at the Public Poetry website, you'll see a video of her giving some background to the poem and reading the poem. And it's really worth taking a look at. So thank you, Maxine. Also, in terms of thanks, thank you so much to Nicole Miyashiro for providing so much biographical detail on tonight's poets, and you'll find her biographies of our 4 on the Public Poetry website. And also my own thanks to Carolyn Wermuth for keeping us all in line and moving the show along. So we're going to open with Simone Di Piero tonight, one of our Philadelphia natives and a longtime resident of San Francisco. He's now a professor emeritus at Stanford and I guess still teaches somewhat in the Stegner Poetry Workshop. He's not. It's history. Okay. He's a free man. He's taught at Louisiana State and Northwestern also. Degree from St. Joseph's University and a degree from San Francisco State. He's published at least 12 compilations of poetry and has done translations from Euripides, Giacomo Leopardi, and 20th century Italian poetry. As a reviewer for the San Diego Reader since 1999, he's been doing art criticism and art commentary and related items, some of which was compiled in a book published in 2010 entitled When Can I See You Again? Simone's poem, Johnny One Note, which is the poem featured on our poster, was published in his recent book of 2011, Nitro Nights. So join me in welcoming Simone Di Piero.
I live in San Francisco. Across the bay is a jazz club in Oakland called Yoshi's. And I was there one night when an alto sax player, Kenny Garrett, was playing. And sitting in that night was one of the great vibraphonists, Bobby Hutcherson. It helps to know that the club is situated right next to an Amtrak line. One of the great things about jazz is, improvisation, where it goes. If you don't record it, gone for good. Johnny One Note, Bobby Hutcherson in Oakland. The mallet strikes, but something's off. And so he hits again, curling that lower lip, purses his brow, as if this sign, this minor woe, were speech the vibes might understand. So when he lifts bluish lids, as if wakened to the desired tone that rings now, it seems, it sounds, under wraps, a waterly quaver through the club crowd's silence, as it floats above us like an aerosol trying to find a new way to escape, passes through the wall's mortared pores to reverb in the cool night air of an unpeopled sidewalk, droning toward the tracks where a passing peopled train sucks up and winds his finally found wild tone around its wheels, held there by steel heat 100 miles until it reaches the sea, where wheels and whistle overreach surging surf the good vibration feels such desire for, and leaves its tedium of the round and round, lofting to a sea that comes and goes, but finally simply goes, as one night, this night, the cool vibes air struck finally in the changed groove of sax and ecstatic kit, is free, finally free, to go where we won't hear from it again. I'm going to read a few poems from a book that came out just a couple of months ago, strange-looking book. The opening poem is called The Running Dog, and I'll start with it. Life, as you say, my friend, is lived in its transitions. And there's a yonder taking place right here. It lives in the electric air of field or room, unseen but palpable as snow or blowing dust. A breakfast of poached eggs, spiked coffee, newsy talk, crushed sun behind the clouds, marine layer vapors phasing blue to green. And the body quivers through its days, unawares but sensate, like a dreaming dog in the still marbled air of its own running. The felt and numb times in between that are the things around us, this pigeon feather, acorn, rinds and grounds and crusts, any this or that, or words that pass between us while we keep trying to say, here by the stove or on your street, exactly what it's like. This next poem is framed by a fact, an old fact. The title of the poem is The Smell of Spearmint. My father died when I was a teenager, and in his last days, I tended to him. And one of the things I needed to do that he insisted on was shaving him, which I, many years later, needed help with when I had shoulder surgery, and I was in a sling. The smell of spearmint. He told, he didn't suggest or ask. So when the unfinished father told the son to do it, the son obeyed and laid out razor and barbasol next to the bed tray's plastic cups, ashtray, straws, and mucilage of scrambled eggs. 43, he demanded to look clean and spare. We die with habits of self-regard. The son, 17, can't know that when he's his father's age, a life's love would soap his face, run the blade, nick a nostril, hold still, you nervous you, then pass into time's menthol airs. He trowels, plumps, pats the lather, he turns the head, he drags the trucky, brutish double blade down jaw and hollow cheeks. It planes the meaty, manly whiskers. It resists its task. Yet life feels lighter in his hand, most of all when it lies lightly on the cabled throat. One big bone, the father's head, in custody of the speechless son, the untrained hand that never knew the contents of that bone, does what it's told to do, and can't know what love will bring back in time. I'll read two more shorter poems. I went on a little day trip today with Jim. We went for a hike in the woods, and living where I do in San Francisco, we don't, the starkness, of the season here right now is, well, it really gets your attention if you come from San Francisco. And you will hear San Franciscans, especially those who, like myself, come from the Northeast, that the autumn, there is no autumn in San Francisco. There's a neighborhood near mine called the Duboce Triangle. Walking the Duboce Triangle. In autumn, in our western city, at end of day, the sunlight rolls out shadows. The air brings early dark. We see one lean redbreast jumping branch to branch. Few leaves fall. There's no frost. A jaybird cuts across our view, and box kite strings, and big blue angels that catch burnt reds on disappearing wings. We look for fallen leaves to kick. We're mortal. We want more leaves. Our seeking saddens us. Our absent autumn waits for us somewhere, and we can't find the place. Its bite and thrust, the sting of lastness, its colder air that burns into our throat, tease us with autumn's absence. And we hold more tightly to the knowledge of what's not with us, but leaves us anyway. And this, a poem addressed to poems, or poems that haven't yet happened. The title is Nocturne. Where are you now, my poems, my sleepwalkers? No mumbles tonight? Where are you, thirst, fever, humming tedium? The sodium streetlights burr outside my window, steadfast, unreachable, little astonishments lighting the way uphill. Where are you now when I need you most? It's late. I'm old. Come soon, you feral cats among the dahlias. Thank you.
Next reader will be Lee Hinton, born in Harrisburg and has lived in Lancaster for most of his life, and I guess a lifelong Pennsylvania native, yes? Lee Hinton attended St. Joseph's University, where he graduated. He's published 5 poetry collections, and his work has appeared in numerous journals. He'll have a poem coming out in the collection Best American Poetry of 2014. He's founder and editor of the journal Fledgling Rag. His poem, Our Ballpark, a couple of years ago, was incorporated into Derek Parker's sculpture Common Thread and installed at the Clipper Magazine Stadium in Lancaster. So we have some tangible work there, very tangible. The poem featured on our poster this time is entitled Epidemic, which was the winner of the Baltimore Review's 2013 Winter Issue Contest and appears in Lee's new collection, The Language of Moisture and Light, which I guess is just now being published, yes? So, welcome, Lee Hinton.
Wow, a lot of people here. I thank you for coming out. I know there are lots and lots of other things you could be doing instead of listening to poetry, but you have taste and class, so that's why you're here. I have to apologize before I read this first poem, because since I'm in the middle of, right in the heart of Nittany Lion country and great football, I have to explain to you that the most perfect sport in the world is baseball. I wrote this poem for my father. It's called Our Ballpark. This is the place where my father educated us, an open-air school of tutelage and transformation. This is where we first learned to count to 3, then later to calculate the angle of a line drive bouncing off the left field wall. We studied the geometry and appreciated the ballet of third to second to first, a triple play. This moving canvas of color was our art school. He gave us lessons on impressionistic blue skies and white lines, the realism of brown dirt and green grass, and the tangible abstraction of red, white, and blue waving beyond the outfield wall. We committed to memory his catechism of morality, faith and opportunity, fairness and hard work. We learned that if you are still playing, there is still hope. But what we came to understand most is that sometimes, for your team, for your family, a sacrifice is the most important play of the game. I don't think this was on purpose, but two of us did go to St. Joseph's University. And that's a Jesuit school, and the Jesuits, well, let's say they're kind of strict. For everyone, every single person who goes to St. Joe's, you have to take 3 courses, 9 credits in theology, 3 courses and 9 credits in philosophy. And that's before you even think about doing some other things. I wrote this poem thinking about the philosophy classes. It's called Metaphysics 101, open book test. 1, if you owned a racehorse, what would you name it? 2, do you always abbreviate the term etc.? Why or why not? 3, what book would you read to a blind dog, and what pictures would you show him? Please provide a coherent rationale for your answer. 4, what is wrong with your picture? Please provide examples. 5, what would you do if you woke up with someone else's smile? Return it or keep it? Please explain. Use additional sheets of paper if needed. 6, what have you done? Please show your work. 7, if you were down to your last $83, would you A, buy a huge bag of potato chips? B, give it to your friendly neighborhood pirate? C, buy all the books by Tracy K. Smith? Or D, create a 300-piece puzzle? 8, should you pull the trigger or safely return the weapon to the drawer? 9, which word best describes your life? A, emulsified. B, limp. C, queasy. Or D, zippy. And number 10, what should you have done? No explanation required. This is called muse transposing, and there's an epigraph by James Baldwin. For while the tale of how we suffer and how we are delighted and how we may triumph is never new, it must be heard. You were with Monk tempting all those black keys in a semi-dark chocolate room, 13 round tables full of liquor. You were with Train, backlit, glistening in the shadows, bleeding the edge, shedding thick, dissonant scales. You were Blue Note and Black Saint in vinyl groove goodness, cotton spinning hollers and harmonics into black art for waiting ears. You are the moment when a C minor chord resolves slowly into sweat, smoke, caramelized satisfaction. You were with Baldwin in the Paris flat, Sonny's piano cooking cornbread and collards. And now, you are here with me in the glare of an Earl Grey morning. White, empty walls, a blank page, 26 letters, full of risk. The next poem is the poster poem. And I dedicated this and wrote this because of my grandmother, who was born in 1899. She lost her husband in a flu epidemic and 2 sons. She was a single mother decades before anybody even thought of inventing the term. And she was a wonderful human being. Epidemic. Each morning, Grandmom awakened, fed oak slabs to a passive stove, heat, breakfast, the surviving family. At the kitchen table, she trusted King James, belief in this God and his ravenous influenza, a life with 2 fewer sons. Each belief burned away in a fever, each night full of reaching for tiny hands. Each night full of reaching for tiny hands, each belief burned away in a fever, a life with 2 fewer sons. In this God and his ravenous influenza, belief. At the kitchen table, she trusted King James, the surviving family, breakfast, heat. fed oak slabs to a passive stove. Each morning, Grandmom awakened. This is the poem that will be in, well, they tell me this. Because my friends tell me that I have absolutely no confidence in myself, which is probably, maybe kind of true. So I won't believe it until I see it. But this is the poem that will be in Best American Poetry 2014 in September. And I wrote this because of a poet who passed away was from Baltimore. And he was a fabulous human being and an absolutely great poet. His name is Chris Toll, and the name of the poem is, and for those of you who might be somewhere in the neighborhood of how old I am, or someone who watches a lot of cartoons, the title might be familiar. It's called No Doubt About It, I Gotta Get Another Hat. In my head, it was Vincent, not Boris, who narrated the Who family fun during Grinch time in December. But then he clocked in for Sears selling Rembrandts, not Lady Kenmore's. Clarity at 14. Why is he in creche? I met Santa, who fingered a pocket full of poems on the corner of St. Paul and Nowhere, now here. 4 times, maybe 3, he passed out couplets to the crowd, a smile full of antlers, Bullwinkle, not Rudolph. I know why Chris is in Christmas. Some gods play with clouds like Play-Doh. Who forgot to wind the clock? Some poets cloud with play like heart tracings. Why is Toll in Atoll? How does a poet fall back into the sky? What time is it? I'm sure, no, certain, only twice each day. This is once. I know why he is in ache. And I will leave you with this poem. I think one of the most difficult things for human beings to do is to communicate with each other. There is also an epigraph for this poem. The epigraph is by Gregory Rabassa. The poem is called The God of Our Dreams, Coda. The epigraph is, every act of communication is an act of translation. All humans speak multiple languages, but never anyone else's. A boss's no knife, no back policy becomes garbled in the red liquid aftermath of a pen to the jugular. Daddy's little girl says nothing for 8 weeks, and no one understands her subtlety. A new love smiles in Portuguese. I love you, he says. Only if, she responds. Listen to your neighbor's dog, listening to their neighbor's ecstasy without an accent. Translate that if you can. Thank you.
Next, we'll have Shara McCallum, who was born in Jamaica, the island, not part of New York. She's now a Lewisburg resident by way of Memphis, I gather, and Miami, and let's see, University of Maryland and Binghamton, New York, where she went to school and got various degrees. At Bucknell, she's the current director of the Stadler Center for Poetry, and she is the latest of several Bucknell poets we've had here as part of the public poetry program. Let's see, Shara has published 4 collections of poetry, yes, and her work has appeared in numerous anthologies. She was a participant in the Public Poetry Selection Committee in 2009, so we're finally giving her her due. Let's see, in 2012, she launched The Poetry Path, which is a presentation of poems throughout the Bucknell campus and throughout the town of Lewisburg, which is intriguing and which I certainly want to look into. Her poem, for the program is entitled Facing It. It was published in the Antioch Review in 2002 and anthologized in her collection Song of Thieves in 2003. Shara McCallum.
Good evening. How are you guys doing? Yeah, good. I want to thank you, Bill, and everybody at the Pennsylvania Center for the Book, English department here, for bringing me and for really promoting not just individual poets, but poetry. So thank you all. I'm going to start with the poem that was on the poster, and thank you for your beautiful designs. Facing It. Always the same questions of blood and bread breaking, eaten in communion with what we know. This chair, the candle flickering, with what we don't. The dark outside the window. Night, ashen like the voice of my hands. If I could again be a child at my mother's side, I would believe in the stove, the lit room, in her skirt swishing against my face as I crumpled the hem in my fist, made my hand a flag to wave my mother's love into my skin. I once was lost, but now am found, she hummed. And we were, she and I believed in the night more fiercely, believed in my mother, my hand wrapped in her skirt, moving back and forth across my face, her face, the face of God, the face I loved. So this is going to be a sad reading at moments. So just know that I will try to insert humor periodically, but I want to read some new poems, and unfortunately they're almost all elegies, beginning with this one, aptly titled, Elegy. First you told me, let's not cross that bridge till we come to it. But tumors bloomed in you the way a hawk plucks prey, without conscience or malice. Then you said, what to do? Every way you turn, makajukyu. And your body's betrayals grew abundant, face bloated as a puffer fish, legs dangling like a marionette's. Then you said, every day a fishing day, but it's not every day you catch fish. And I asked myself, who, if I could, would I follow into the world of the dead? Which was the wrong question, whose answer I already knew. At the time, I believed love meant I could not look. Now, I am sure of little, but death is like an ill-fitted suit that can be worn longer than we'd imagine. Fable. You shrugged off the raiment of the living, and I knew I would forget you, as the way all the dead are forgotten, who become an archipelago reconstructed in dream. As when the mountains came down to meet the sea and grew wings, your going tore green from each leaf of each tree, and the sun could find no habitation. And your name in our mouths was a prayer uttered in a strange tongue, a snake swallowing its own tail, an island circled by a ship without port. Okay, so I have to give you a little break. This is the respite. It's not exactly happy, but it's the voice that I've been writing in for a long time, which when I began, I thought was really my grandmother. And then at some point I realized she wasn't saying any of these things, so it was just some other voice that I was hearing in my head. And this is a woman who is very funny and wise, who's like my grandmother. That's how I've come to think of her. And I'm not really crazy, but she does speak to me a lot. The parable of shit and flowers. I not the Lord. If I turn the other cheek, is me ask them going get. You, from time you was little bit, you pick up one ugly bug and call it beautiful. You stop to chat with every sorefoot man in the street. Even how you is big woman, come in like you forget what people can do. Gal, you too trusting. I did tell you that long time now, but your hard of hearing. You ignorant so, till me don't know what to do with you. You don't even watch news. Stick your head in sand like ostrich. Child, I know you grown, but you still picnic for me. Life not easy for true. You choose to believe is only better rose. Well, I go tell you something. I did grow them. And what you have to put in dirt, stink to ras, but is what make them come up. And just so you know, roses grow in Jamaica. So that is historically and, not historically, what's the word? Botanically accurate. People ask that when they say roses grow in Jamaica. I'm like, they're hardy. They grow all over the place. All right. So continuing, I'm just going to read a couple other poems that are new poems that are in a kind of sequence where other things are talking to me, not people. So I don't know why I like voice so much, but I do. I love inventing personae in poetry. And I guess I have not been satisfied only to have people, but now I have concepts talking to me. So this is grief talking to me, and then I have memory as well. This is what I imagine they would say to me. Grief. In the room of the mind, I rearrange the furniture. I make the sky contract till it no longer contains the horizon. When I hover, you hear cicadas crescendo. You mistake me for winter's onset or the body as it ages. Foolish girl, you console yourself with fables where straw is spun to gold, yet a contract remains unpaid. Have you really not yet learned? Only in fairy tales is disaster averted with the discovery of a name. In this world, magic claims no dominion. Death is a door which keeps opening. Memory. I bruise the way the most secreted, most tender part of a thigh exposed, purples then blues. No spit shine shoes, I'm dirt you can't wash from your feet. Wherever you go, know I'm the wind accosting the trees, the howling night of your sea. Try to leave me, I'll pin you between a rock and a hard place. Will hunt you even as you erase your tracks with the tail ends of your skirts. You think I'm gristle, begging to be chewed. No, my love, I'm bone. Rather, the sound bone makes when it snaps. That ditty, lingering in you like ruin. Okay, so I really feel this is some kind of guilt issue that I have at readings, where I always have to end on some other note. I can never end on that one. So I'm going back to the almost always poem I end readings with. And this is the very, very first poem I wrote that was most clearly in my grandmother's voice to me. And so she really did say almost everything in here. This one was easy. It was just a matter of, transcription. Miss Sally's wisdom. Chinese man say you put purse upon ground. Okay, Caroline, take up your purse now. Go ahead, pick it up. Thank you. Chinese man say you put purse upon ground, you never have no money. When you was not born yet, and your mother was only a little picnic herself, I did clean people's house to make ends meet. And when I walk down the street, and some woman stand up on her veranda, chatting whole heap of rubbish, I just go on about my business, same way. I never so much as miss a step when I hear her bellow, Kuya, but look what that woman come to, no? Now, to see you like so, looking like you lost your last friend. Believe me, I understand. I know what it is to want and not have. To dream and next thing, you turn round and whoops, your life done pass already before you even think you start. So listen good to your old granny. Clutch your purse upon your lap or tight up against your chest. But remember, wanty, no getty. Thank you.
Finally, Stephen Berg, who unfortunately is unable to be with us tonight. But I'll say a few words about him, and Jerry Costanzo has agreed to read his poster poem for us. Stephen Berg was born in Philadelphia and has been a longtime resident there. He still teaches at the University of the Arts, and he's published over a dozen collections of his poetry, co-edited anthologies, has done an English translation of Oedipus the King, compiled English versions of Zen poetry and Eskimo and Aztec songs. In 1972, he founded the American Poetry Review, which continues to be one of the premier poetry journals in this country, and he continues as an editor of that publication. In 1991, he was commissioned to collaborate with the painter Tom Chimes on a public art project entitled Sleeping Woman, a 1,200-foot-long line of poetry sealed by glaze atop the stone retaining wall along the Schuylkill River. I haven't seen this. Has anyone? A field trip for all of us, I suppose. His poem, What I Wanted to Say, originally appeared in his collection Grief in 1975 and then was reprinted in New and Selected Poems of 1992. Thank you, Jerry, for being willing to read this.
I was heartened to learn from Bill, not speaking on behalf of Stephen Berg now, to learn earlier this evening that Pittsburgh has been favored by an organization, institution really, in State College, Pennsylvania. I have to say, as a resident of Pittsburgh for the past 44 years, that Harrisburg has located Pittsburgh somewhere in the West Virginia panhandle. What I wanted to say. I woke at 6. Birds cried from the roofs. No sun yet. A bleak sky and clouds. The first cars taking men to work. I slept downstairs on the couch. Half the night I saw your emptied face, your weak, shiny hands that had lost their warmth after the heart attack. Like water. You could barely talk. I thought about what we say to each other, even now, and about the white fires of the crematory furnace that made you ashes. All this came up as easily as the wind shakes the leaves on one of the trees outside my house, then stops, and the leaves hang there so quiet you believe something miraculous will happen. The street lamps glow with a sudden brightness You feel satisfied with the cracked chimneys, the dull orange haze blowing across the stars. You could sit endlessly on the steps, smoking, doing nothing, never speak again. But this isn't what I wanted to say. The birds were calling me, I think, or someone. There were tears. I stumbled. My jaws ached. I bent over my sleeping children to say goodbye, and each one turned to me and smiled. But this came back. Your dead face was a blank white flower opening in me, which I couldn't touch. I stood somewhere saying, nobody can say this. Thank you on behalf of Stephen Berg.
Thank you so much, Jerry, for stepping in for Stephen Berg and reading his poem to us. Thanks to all of you for coming tonight. I hope you'll all join me in a special thank you to our biographical MC tonight, Bill Brockman, who is not only a member of our advisory board, but also as Paterno Librarian for Family Literature, is a supporter of this award. So please join me in thanking Bill for his support. We truly appreciate it. I want to remind all of you, we're having a signing and a book sale of all of our featured poets tonight after this event, and we also have these posters for you. This is the Public Poetry Project. We want you to take your own copies of these posters and spread these poems out so that others can enjoy them as we did tonight. So thank you to each and every one of you for coming, and let's give one more round of applause to our wonderful poets. Thank you. I'm sorry?
Do you remember